Hello, welcome back to the Grape Explorer. Today we are going to be talking about careers in the wine industry. This is possibly my most requested video at this time. What you want to know is how something like a WSET qualification, the Wine and Spirit Education Trust, can help you and what type of roles are available in the wine industry. If you're new to this channel, welcome. I'm the Grape Explorer. On this channel I do wine education, product reviews and lots of wine tasting. So if you are interested in wine, consider subscribing. Now, as many of you who've supported this channel over the last couple of years know, I don't work in the wine industry myself, but of course without the WSET qualifications I couldn't possibly have started this channel. But what I do have is a history in recruitment. I've had a number of roles in the recruitment industry, so I can certainly talk about the sorts of things you need to be doing to secure a role and how you can develop a career. When we're thinking about the wine industry and the way that I've structured today's video, I think about it from three perspectives, three particular types of role in the industry itself. Those would be commercial roles that would be associated with the sourcing, buying, selling and marketing of wines. You would have service roles. These are going to be associated with the selling and serving of wines, perhaps in an establishment like a bar or a restaurant. And then finally you've got production roles, which I associate directly with the production of wine, the management of vineyards, and all the various roles that take place in the winery and in the vineyards. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover off a little bit of information about each of these three categories, giving you some insight into the types of role that you would find associated with these categories. Let's get started then with commercial roles. And for me, commercial roles is definitely something where a WSET qualification is going to put you on a really good footing to start a career. Now, I've listed here a few specific commercial roles that I know a WSET qualification is going to benefit you. And indeed, where I've been sourcing information about job roles that are available right now, all of these types of roles had some sort of WSET requirement to be able to take the role. So let's start off by looking at a wine buyer. This is somebody who's sourcing wines from different locations globally, as well as undertaking the negotiation of prices. You would need to be able to identify trends in the wine market. And this is where a WSET qualification comes into its own. You need to be able to understand the types of wines that a particular region is producing. You need to understand the countries and the regions in those countries where you're sourcing wines from, because you need to be able to hold conversations with wine producers and winemakers about their products, and you can only do that if you have an understanding of their wine. Next, we've got brand managers. They're going to be responsible for creating marketing plans and brand campaigns to influence consumers. And again, with a WSET qualification, you can talk about the qualities of wine, the qualities of the different grapes, the advantages of the different regions you're promoting. And again, you can only do this if you understand those regions in full. You've also got events managers organising events to promote wines, which could include wine tastings, wine exhibitions and shows. And of course, without a qualification like WSET, you haven't necessarily learned how to make a systematic approach to tasting. You need to be able to take paying guests through tasting, perhaps through wine seminars, tasting seminars. And in order to do that, you need to know what you're talking about. And then finally, we've got sales, retail and wholesale, where you're needing to develop relationships, either with companies or with the general public. And again, when you go into one of your local wine stores, for example, the person who's selling you those wines should be really knowledgeable about the product. They should be able to hold decent conversations with you about the wine, about the producer, about where those grapes are grown. And again, you can only really do that if you've studied, if you have a qualification to back it up. So lots of different roles in the commercial sector. Now, moving on to service roles. And when it comes to service roles, WSET qualifications are absolutely going to help, but you might think about some of the qualifications that come out of the Court of Master Sommeliers as well, because a lot of these are going to be service focused. Bartenders, for example, you need an in-depth knowledge of the wines to effectively advise customers on drink selections, particularly where someone isn't sure what they like. You know, someone might just know that they like red wine over white wine. And so what you need to be able to do is then deduce, well, what kind of characteristics do you like in a wine? You can only do that if you've got some sort of service qualification or service knowledge. And actually WSET really helps there because you're able to describe the grapes, the qualities of that grapes. What are they going to give you in terms of tannin, acidity, alcohol, length? All of these things are really beneficial when you're talking to the paying public and of course trying to get them to buy more glasses of wine in a bar. You've also got the role of the waiter, which in addition to the food service, you'll be able to need to advise guests on their wine selections. We've covered off on this channel before wine and food pairing, and so the role of waiter really becomes important if you know what someone's ordered to eat, they're not sure what they might want to order to drink. That's where your skills really come into play. And again, WSET does cover food and drink and pairing to some degree, but it's going to be a sommelier exam that really takes it to the next level, really gives you some really insightful information around food and wine pairing. And then finally, we've actually got sommelier as a role. Someone who needs to be highly knowledgeable, specialised in all aspects of wine service, and particular that food and wine matching. They may also have an additional role where they're supporting the restaurants with the selections of wines that then go on sale. And again, if you've ever looked at some wine lists in some restaurants, they don't actually give away a lot of information. You need someone who can talk about that wine to you if you're a paying customer, and that's the role of the sommelier. They're really there to bring the wines to life, to make your food, your whole meal, the experience that bit much more enjoyable. And this is where you probably do need to consider a Court of Master Sommelier type qualification. And then finally, the third category are those production type roles. We're now talking about roles in the vineyards, in the wineries, and these are really wide ranging. They could be from anything like a grape picker, seasonal work, which require a good level of fitness, as well as an understanding on how to handle the fruit appropriately. You may then have a role where you're working in a winery, getting you a little bit more hands-on with the winemaking processes. You may be responsible for blending wines, looking after the wine storage. And then finally, you're going to have a role like a vineyard manager where you're leading a team of individuals year-round to ensure that the vineyard, the winery, and all the associated properties are well maintained. Now, roles in this sector actually require certain qualifications dependent upon the role that you're doing. As I say, something like grape picking is quite seasonal. It'd be nice to have a qualification to understand the vineyard cycle, to understand when certain berries are ripened, when they're picked, when they're harvested. But by no means do you need a specific qualification to be a vineyard hand. And in fact, here in the UK, a lot of vineyards actually reach out to the general public at harvest time looking for support, and you tend to get a nice glass of wine thrown in as you're doing that. When we move into some more of those technical roles, it really comes down to the seniority of that particular role. You know, if I'm thinking about something like a vineyard manager or a head of a vineyard or the head of a winery, you may actually be looking at a really high level of education here. You might be looking at a diploma or a degree in viticulture that's come from a recognised university. But where I think a WSET qualification comes in really handy is that winery worker. And that's because you learn a lot of red winemaking techniques, white winemaking techniques as part of your qualification. So you understand some of the more technical winemaking elements, things like carbonic maceration or malolactic fermentation. To have a base understanding about what those things mean are really going to put you on the front foot when it comes to a career in wine. So as someone who's had a history of recruitment, what are my tips when it comes to a career in wine? Well, I've highlighted a few bullets that I think are really important here. You need to keep learning. Qualifications such as WSET are always going to be beneficial. But you know what? There's so much information out there. There are people who write about wine. There are magazines you can buy. You can watch videos on YouTube, for example, which may help your understanding. You need to be realistic about your goals. You know, we all have to start somewhere, and you may have an end goal in mind, some aspirations you have, but you really need to plot a career path that's going to take you to that place. You need to establish contacts within the wine industry. You know, you might just network through wine tastings, wine events, consumer shows, local wine clubs. That's something that I really do. You know, through Instagram, through this channel, I develop contacts with people who I may not necessarily work with in the future, but it's nice to show some people locally who I may want to go and do some photography for, I may want to go and do a video on. You know, that's how I build my network, and wine tasting gives you the opportunities to talk to wine producers. You can find out about whether they hire staff seasonally, do they have any roles open. There's lots of different conversations you can have with individuals in the wine industry. And then my final point is learning to compromise. And I think this is a little bit aligned to the setting realistic goals, but also you need to think about the life-work balance, the fulfillment of the work you're doing against the income that you might receive. Not all wine-paying jobs are going to be fantastic paying jobs, but you would be working in an industry that you love, and I think that's really important when it comes to the life-work balance. If you're happy in what you do, you know, think about it from the perspective of someone who's sat at a desk 50 hours a week. They may not be getting the quality of life that they like, but they might get the money that they want. But then on the flip side to that, they may be willing to settle for less money, but be truly happy in what they're doing. And you need to consider that when you're thinking about your career. And just to give you a little bit of an idea about opportunities, I live in the UK, as I'm sure you all know. Right now, English wine is on the up. There are lots of vineyards out there that are developing, that are matured, and that means there's lots of career paths available. And I've just been able to source a few of the wine jobs I found on a UK internet site just to show you the variety of roles that are available right now in the UK. Look, we've got some harvest interns required this year. They're going to be doing a lot of the grape picking. We've got someone who's in the tasting room, the hospitality role, is going to be talking to the paying public about wine. We've got someone looking to develop a wine organisation. We've got someone who's looking to hire someone who's going to buy the wine for their company. And then we've got some of those vineyard related roles. Look, we've got vineyard assistant, vineyard manager. It just goes to show how many opportunities there are right now out there. It just takes a little bit of grit and determination on your part to ensure that you open that door and start your career. But something like WSET, that's the question I get asked quite a lot, absolutely is going to benefit you. A lot of the roles I just showed you there on the screen were asking for WSET qualifications as a minimum, ideally at level 3, although a lot of the employers were happy with level 2 if you were looking to develop your education, move on to level 3. And I know for a lot of you, that's exactly what you're doing. Whatever you choose to do in your wine career, I hope it is really successful. I'd love to hear some stories below from those of you who have pursued a career in wine and the types of advantages and enjoyment it's brought you. For now, I'm going to say cheers, all the best. I'm the Grape Explorer. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers.